The courtroom was overflowing. Cameras snapped from every angle, the flashes bouncing off the polished wood like lightning. Reporters shoved their way forward, desperate for the perfect shot. The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself was vibrating. Diddy entered slowly, dressed in a sharp navy suit, but his face told a different story. Pale, lips tight, eyes shifting nervously. For weeks, he had carried himself like nothing could touch him. But today was different. His empire, his freedom, his entire identity, everything hung in the balance. The whispers in the gallery grew louder, fueled by rumors swirling outside these walls. Maximum sentence. That was the phrase everyone kept repeating. Diddy sat down beside his attorneys, but his body betrayed him. His hands trembled, his jaw clenched and unclenched, the weight of the moment sinking in. His lawyer leaned close, murmuring something under his breath, but Diddy barely acknowledged him. His attention stayed fixed on the judge, scanning for the slightest flicker of mercy. But the judge's face was stone, cold, unreadable, almost carved from ice. Before we continue with this gripping moment, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon. That way you will never miss the stories we bring you. Stories just like this. Now, let's get back to it. The prosecutor rose slowly, straightening his tie, his voice slicing through the silence like a blade. His closing words came sharp, deliberate, each one echoing through the chamber. Your Honor, this isn't about one lapse in judgment. This is about a dangerous pattern, an abuse of power that cannot be ignored. Each word landed heavier than the last, pressing Diddy further into his seat. Sweat began to glisten across his forehead, his composure cracking under the weight of it all. The man who once ruled the music world like a monarch now looked small, diminished, almost fragile. In the back, fans covered their mouths in disbelief. Some shook their heads, unable to process what they were seeing. Others recorded on their phones, live-streaming the downfall of a giant to millions online. Social media was on fire, hashtags trending, theories exploding, the world waiting for Diddy's empire to finally collapse. The judge's hands rested on the bench, perfectly still. The silence between each statement was suffocating, almost unbearable. Just a few feet away, Diddy's children sat frozen, fear etched across their faces. His mother clutched her rosary with trembling hands, lips moving in desperate prayer. The weight of the room extended far beyond those walls. It was in the streets, the headlines, and across every glowing screen in America. Everyone was waiting for one thing, the verdict. And deep down, Diddy already knew it. This wasn't just another day in court. This was a day his entire life could be rewritten forever. The prosecutor's tone sharpened, gaining strength like a storm closing in. Every word cut deeper, stripping away whatever hope Diddy had left. This court has heard enough, he said firmly, his gaze locking on the judge with a fury that had been years in the making. We are not dealing with accidents or bad decisions. These were choices, deliberate, calculated, repeated. Mr. Combs abused his power, silenced his victims, twisted evidence, and thought his wealth made him untouchable. Gasps broke through the gallery, the sound crashing over the room like a wave. Diddy's face remained cold, but his grip on the defense table betrayed him, knuckles turning bone white as his hands clenched tight. His attorneys exchanged uneasy glances, scrambling for a counter, but every word from the prosecutor landed like a hammer strike. Each statement another nail, sealing what felt like an inevitable fate. The gallery sat frozen, breaths held, every eye locked forward. Even the judge leaned in slightly, hands folded, gaze unflinching. The prosecutor paced methodically, his footsteps echoing across the marble floor like a countdown. For decades, he declared, his voice rising, this man built an empire on intimidation, influence, and money. But in this courtroom, none of that matters. Hey, the law speaks louder than power. Diddy shifted suddenly, leaning toward his lead attorney, whispering in a frantic rush. His lawyer shook his head, whispering back just as quickly. But Diddy's chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, his breathing ragged, cracking the mask of composure he had clung to for weeks. Fear now covered his face, the kind of fear no amount of wealth could erase. Behind him, his family sat motionless, their anguish painted clear. One of his sons wiped silent tears, his jaw trembling as he tried to stay composed. His mother lowered her head into her hands, rocking gently, whispering prayers into the silence. Across the aisle, Diddy's former allies sat with folded arms, stone-faced and unmoved. To them, this wasn't just a trial. This was a reckoning. Outside, chaos roared. Reporters stormed the courthouse steps, microphones stabbing into any willing witness. Protesters shouted, some demanding justice, others begging for mercy. News helicopters circled above, broadcasting the moment to millions. Inside, the prosecutor delivered his final strike. His tone dropped lower, colder, sharp as steel. Your Honor, this man has lived believing he is untouchable. It's time to prove that he is not. He turned on his heel, the click of his shoes against polished floors hitting like the pound of a gavel. Diddy stared dead ahead, eyes glazed, lips pressed tight. Every rumor, every secret, every decision pressed down on him at once. And for the first time, he knew the truth everyone else was starting to realize. This time, there may be no escape. The silence was suffocating. The judge slowly removed his glasses, laying them on the bench with a deliberate motion that sent chills through the room. Something was coming, and everyone could feel it. Diddy's lead attorney rose carefully, tugging his suit jacket into place with trembling hands. The weight pressing on him was visible, crushing. He cleared his throat, voice low but steady. His words meant to pierce the tension. Your Honor, he began, locking eyes with the judge, my client is not the monster the prosecution has painted him to be. He stepped forward with a stack of papers, but didn't bother reading them. Instead, he spoke directly, reaching for sincerity. Yes, mistakes were made. Yes, choices carry consequences. But Sean Combs has also spent decades giving back, mentoring artists, creating opportunities where there were none, building a legacy bigger than himself. He is not beyond redemption. Diddy leaned in closer, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on his attorney like each word was oxygen. For the first time all day, he nodded slightly, clinging to the flicker of hope. But despite the plea, the tension in the room only deepened. The defense's words hung in the air, but the faces around the room told the truth. No one was moved. On the opposite side, the prosecutor leaned back, arms folded, wearing the faintest smirk. He knew the evidence was a mountain too steep to climb. The defense attorney's voice rose, filled with desperation, pleading for compassion, for mercy, for a chance at redemption. Diddy's mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, while his daughter leaned close, whispering prayers no one else could hear. Camera flashes at the gallery, catching every tear, every trembling breath. But the judge didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on the attorney, cold and unreadable, his silence louder than any gavel. The defense's final words cracked with emotion. Your Honor, this is not just a man before you. This is a father, a son, an icon to millions who believe it could rise from nothing. We are not asking for forgiveness. We are asking for redemption. The room went still. The only sound the faint hum of cameras outside and the tapping of Diddy's fingers against polished wood, shaking despite his effort to hide it. Diddy closed his eyes, inhaling deep, as if he were replaying his entire life in a single breath, the music, the fame, the scandals, the power, the choices that brought him here. When he opened them again, his gaze drifted to his children. His lips moved faintly, whispering words only they could feel. Please, not like this. Yet the silence dragged on. The judge offered no reaction, no sign of what was coming. And deep down, Diddy knew. This wasn't just about freedom anymore. This was survival. His attorney sank back into his chair, defeated, as a crushing weight of silence pressed down on everyone. Diddy clasped his trembling hands, trying to anchor himself, but the fear only grew heavier. His eyes flickered toward the bench, searching desperately for a flicker of hope, but the judge's expression was carved in stone. Diddy whispered to his lawyer, voice shaking, "What's going to happen?" The reply came soft, almost lifeless. "We've done all we can. Now it's in his hands." The words hit harder than any headline, any insult, any accusation. This was the end of the line. No secret phone calls, no backroom deals, no influence left to trade. For the first time in his career, power meant nothing. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple, but he didn't wipe it away. He stared ahead, eyes glossy, trying to keep from breaking as the entire world watched. Behind him, his mother clutched her rosary so tight her knuckles turned white, rocking gently as prayers slipped from her lips. His daughter buried her face into her grandmother's shoulder, too terrified to look. His son sat rigid, fists clenched, jaw locked, fighting back tears. Across the aisle, the prosecution sat still as stone, victory already etched into their posture. The lead prosecutor leaned back in his chair, hands folded neatly, a faint grin tugging at his lips. Diddy lowered his head, rubbing his temples, flashes of his past assaulting him all at once. The heights of fame, the endless parties, the headlines, the denials, every choice replayed like a broken film reel. For years he believed he was untouchable. But now, trapped in this moment, stripped of everything, he felt more vulnerable than ever. He closed his eyes, whispering words so faint no one could catch them. His lips moved again, a desperate plea only he and God could hear. Please, give me one more chance. When he opened his eyes, the truth hit harder than before. No one in the room cared about his music, his legacy, or the empire he had built. To them, Sean Diddy Combs was no mogul, no king, no legend. He was just another man waiting for a verdict that could erase everything. He was no longer a mogul, no longer untouchable. He was just another man staring down judgment. The silence around him was suffocating. Every cough, every shuffle, every creak of the benches echoed like thunder. Diddy inhaled deeply, his chest rising in uneven bursts, his face stripped bare confidence. Deep down, he felt it. Something irreversible was on its way. He just didn't know how devastating it would be. Outside, chaos erupted like a storm. Hundreds of reporters crowded the courthouse steps, cameras flashing nonstop like lightning. Helicopters hovered above, live feeds streaming every second to millions worldwide. Protesters clashed in the streets, some demanding justice, chanting for the harshest sentence possible, others pleading for mercy, begging the court to show compassion. Inside, the noise was muffled, but the tension was deafening, pressing down on everyone in the room. Diddy sat motionless, but his mind spun wildly. He could hear the faint chanting from outside, seeping through the walls like a ghostly reminder. This wasn't just his trial anymore. It was a global spectacle, and the world wanted blood. Across the gallery, reporters typed frantically, broadcasting every flicker of emotion from his face. Twitter burned with hashtags. Instagram flooded with images. News outlets already had banners pre-written, ready to drop. Yet inside the courtroom, time stood still. The judge remained silent, hands folded neatly, face carved from stone. Diddy turned his head toward his children. His oldest son stared forward, unblinking, fighting to mask his pain. His youngest daughter clung to her grandmother's arm, knuckles pale from the grip. His mother held her rosary like it was a last lifeline, whispering desperate prayers through trembling lips. Diddy straightened slightly, trying to summon the posture of the mogul he once was, but the weight on his shoulders crushed every attempt. Suddenly, the heavy courtroom doors creaked open. A clerk stepped in, leaning toward the bench to whisper something in the judge's ear. For the briefest second, the judge's expression shifted, almost too subtle to notice. But Diddy saw it. His heart skipped violently, fingers digging into the edge of the table like he was trying to tether himself to reality. His breathing grew rapid, his chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. His lawyer's whispers blurred into background noise, drowned by the thunder of his own heartbeat. Then it came, the sound everyone had been waiting for. The judge raised his gavel and tapped it once. Just once. But that single strike cut the air like a blade. Conversation ceased instantly. Cameras fell silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. Diddy closed his eyes, whispering a final prayer through clenched teeth, knowing this was no longer about today. This was about everything, every choice, every lie, every secret crashing down at once. The judge shifted in his chair, the faint creak echoing through the chamber. He leaned forward slowly, his eyes locking on Diddy with the force of a spotlight. The tension snapped to a breaking point. Every soul in the room knew the next words would alter everything. The silence thickened until even breaths felt amplified. Diddy sat frozen, staring at the polished wood of the table, refusing to look up, as if delaying eye contact could somehow delay fate. His lawyer placed a steady hand on his arm, whispering softly, "Stay calm." But there was no calm left. The judge cleared his throat, the low rumble rolling across the room. Then, with a voice as steady as stone, he spoke. "Mr. Combs." This court has considered every statement, every argument, every piece of evidence presented before us. The judge's words cut through the air like steel. He paused deliberately, letting the silence choke the room. You stand accused of multiple counts of abuse, racketeering, obstruction, and manipulation of justice. We've heard the prosecution. We've heard the defense. We've heard the testimonies of those left scarred. Each word landed like a hammer strike. The gallery rippled with tension. Pens stopped moving. Phones lowered. Even the prosecutors leaned forward now, sensing gravity in every syllable. Diddy's breath quickened. His fingers interlocked so tightly his knuckles turned white. Behind him, his mother's muffled sob was stifled only by his daughter's trembling hand. This court does not bend under influence. Wealth does not buy innocence. Fame does not place a man above the law. Actions have consequences. Diddy closed his eyes for a fleeting second, jaw clenched, his entire body wound like a spring about to snap. The judge flipped a page slowly, deliberately, before locking eyes again. His voice dropped lower, colder. The crimes committed under your watch left scars that will last lifetimes. This court will not forget, and neither will they. He gestured toward the row of victims, their faces pale, eyes sharp with unspoken fury. Diddy turned briefly, catching their gaze, before lowering his head in shame. The room held its breath as the judge steadied his hand on the bench. His tone grew deliberate, measured, each word pulling everyone to the edge of their seats. Mr. Combs, this court is about to make a decision that will define the rest of your life. Every camera clicked. Every microphone tilted closer. The weight of the world pressed on Diddy's chest. His hands trembled under the table. His breathing was shallow now, every inhale a battle. The judge paused again, stretching silence into eternity. His knuckles whitened against the bench before his voice finally shattered the stillness. Sean Combs. The sound of his name cracked through the air. Gasps swept across the gallery. Diddy's body stiffened, eyes wide, chest heaving like he already knew what was coming. The judge's voice turned to stone. For your repeated crimes, for the irreparable harm inflicted on others, and for your blatant disregard for law, this court has no choice. He paused one final time, and the world stopped breathing, but to impose the maximum sentence allowed. The room erupted. Gasps, cries, shouts. The gallery shook with disbelief. Even the prosecutors, who had come in confident, exchanged stunned glances at the weight of what had just been declared. And at the defense table, Sean Diddy Combs sat frozen, his world collapsing in real time as cameras captured every flicker of his downfall. Diddy's lips parted, eyes wide, glassy with shock. The words didn't register. His mind refused them, rejected them. A whisper slipped out, so faint only his lawyer caught it. No, this can't be happening. But it was. The judge's voice cut like steel. You are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. Reporters bolted for the doors, phones up, live streams already firing into the world. Outside, protesters roared, a storm of voices crashing against one another. Justice for some, betrayal for others. Diddy staggered back in his chair, his breath ragged, chest tight. His legs betrayed him when he tried to stand. He collapsed to his knees, the thud echoing like a gunshot. His mother screamed, collapsing into his daughter's arms. His son buried his face in trembling hands. The empire had fallen. The king was broken. Bailiffs rushed in, steadying him as tears finally broke free, rolling silently down his cheeks. The man who once built an empire now looked small, powerless, cornered by the very system he thought he could outlast. The judge's gavel slammed 3 times. Order, order in the court. But there was no order left. Only chaos, only collapse. This wasn't just a sentence. It was an execution, a public dismantling of everything he ever was. Diddy slumped back, hand shaking, eyes vacant. His lawyer whispered, frantic, but the words couldn't reach him. 30 years. No parole. No escape. Just a nightmare replaying over and over in his skull. Outside, the world burned. Hashtags dominated. News banners screamed. Voices split down the middle. Justice or conspiracy, the debate was endless. But inside, time froze. For Sean Diddy Combs, it was finished. The man, the mogul, the myth, stripped bare before the world. And as the bailiffs closed in, guiding him toward the end of it all, one truth thundered louder than the gavel, louder than the crowd. This was a day everything ended. To him, it felt like silence, an eerie, suffocating void where nothing existed but those words. 30 years. No parole. His attorney leaned in, whispering fast, urgent. But Diddy didn't move, didn't blink. His body was stone, his mind spinning violently out of control. Memories crashed through him. His empire, his power, his untouchable image. Each one flashing, each one shattering. Gone. A bailiff stepped forward, hand heavy on his shoulder. For a moment, Diddy resisted, knees trembling, clinging to the delusion that this couldn't be real, that someone, anyone, would step in. But reality pressed down, merciless. Behind him, his mother's sobs rattled the room, her hands shaking as she clutched her daughter. His son stood rigid, fists clenched, fighting to stay strong. Their faces told a story words never could, pure devastation. Across the gallery, the victims stared back, eyes sharp with a mix of vindication and exhaustion. For them, this was closure. For him, the end. Reporters stormed the exits, shouting into cameras. Breaking news. Diddy sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Helicopters thundered overhead. Hashtags exploded across screens worldwide. #justice served. #Diddy sentenced. And then, the click, cold steel biting into his wrists. The cuffs locked down, echoing like gunfire in the courtroom. No private exit. No shield. No empire left to protect him. In that moment, he was no longer a mogul, no longer a king. Just inmate #54723. The bailiffs pulled him toward the back door, every step heavy, deliberate. Flashes lit his face, reporters screaming questions into the storm. Do you have anything to say? Diddy, is this justice? Will you appeal? He didn't answer. He didn't even raise his head. Halfway to the door, his eyes found his daughter's. A flicker, barely a second. Something inside him cracked. Tears welled, lips trembling as he mouthed two silent words. I'm sorry. Then he was gone. Outside, chaos erupted. Supporters wailed. Critics cheered. The world split in half. Inside a holding cell below the courthouse, silence replaced the noise. Diddy sat on a steel bench, head in his hands, the weight of 30 years crushing him. No cameras, no entourage, no escape. Just him, the man who once ruled an industry, who once moved mountains, now locked in stillness. The door clanged shut, and in that metallic finality, it became clear. This wasn't just the end of Sean Diddy Combs' freedom. This was the end of his empire.